Hey YouTubers, hey, my name is Rick and I'm located out of the New Orleans area. And what I'm going to show you is how I changed my starter in my 2011 Mercedes SL550 and sort of walk you through the steps here. So what happened was, after troubleshooting my car, I finally figured out I had a bad starter. And I put one on order, and I got one from eBay, and actually it came in late yesterday evening. So I was able to put the starter back in the car, got the two bolts, and also the two wire leads connected to the starter, and then I ran out of daylight. So this is where we are here now. Today is October 1st, 2020, and it's early in the morning. It's about 8 o'clock, and we're going to go ahead and finish the installation. But what I like to do is sort of backtrack a little bit and show you the sequence of events that led up to this. So what happened was, I want to say it was about 3 months ago, I was at, I was at the grocery store, and when I got back in my car, I went to start it, and it only cranked over once, and then it stopped. So then I tried to start it again, and then there was nothing at all. There was no noise, there was no clicks, nothing at all. So after looking at it and trying to figure out what's going on, make sure the car was in parked and all the different things, I just thought I had a dead battery. Now my car has two batteries. I have a battery in the front that's a starting battery for the starter, and then I have a battery in the back, which is what's called a consumer battery or auxiliary battery, right? And that powers all the electronics in the car and everything else. So anyway, my friend came over and we tried to jump the battery in the front, the starting battery, and there was no luck. And so I did have a voltmeter, and I did check the battery. Basically it read 12.6 volts DC. So the battery was good. And then I checked the battery in the back. I just wanted to make sure there was nothing wrong with my electronic system, right? And so again, that battery roughly read 12.6 volts DC. So I was pretty confident there was nothing wrong with my batteries. And so after, just, reading the manual and trying to figure out what's going on, I had to finally give up and get my car towed back to my house. So I had to call up AAA and they came pick up my car and towed it back to my house. Now, what happened is, the car has been sitting here for about 3 months, but the reason it's been sitting here for 3 months is a few different reasons, right? One of the main reasons is I had a real tough time trying to get somebody to work on my car, so either you call them up and you have to make an appointment and it's like 3 weeks out, 4 weeks out, or, it could be simply as I didn't want to bring it to Mercedes because I was just afraid what they were going to charge me. And so I did check with some other mechanic shops, and, again, they were too busy, or it just seemed like they wasn't interested. And so at that point in time, I decided, well, maybe try to fix it myself. So anyway, I was waiting for a good day, a good weekend to work on it, and it was just a lot of things going on, and I finally got around to it. So anyway, when I got my car, I pulled it into my garage and started working on it. I just wanted to check the batteries again, just to make sure everything was okay, everything was fine. Next, I checked all the fuses. There's some fuses under the hood. There's a fuse box panel on the left by the driver's side, near the windshield, and then there's also another fuse panel on the right hand side near the windshield. And I just decided to check all the fuses just to make sure it wasn't an electronic issue. And also there's a fuse panel behind the passenger seat, and I pulled all those fuses and they all checked out good as well. So the next step in the process is I said, well, let me check this relay. There's what they call a starting relay. And for my car, if you look at the diagram, it was the letter L for that particular relay because there's several relays in the box. So anyway, I checked the relay and, basically it checked good. So at this point in time, it was pointing towards a starter issue. But the challenge was I couldn't get underneath the car because there's not enough clearance, to pull what they call the S lead off of the starter and to check it with a voltmeter. So anyway, I knew my next step in the process was to jack up the car. Now, what happens is that, jacking up the car, you've got to make sure you do a lot of safety procedures. I did go on YouTube and watched a few videos to make sure, how to properly jack up this car. But anyway, basically I got some 3-ton jack stands underneath my car. I got one on the left side and one on the right side. So let's take a quick look and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, if I could turn the camera around here. Okay, let's see. For some reason I can't turn the camera around. Okay, so I got the camera turned around. I had to pause my video and then restart it, so turn the camera around. So this is my car. It's in the garage right now. And you could see where I jacked up the car using the Mercedes jack. And I got these jack stands underneath. There's a certain spot, that you put these jack stands for support. And these are 3-ton jacks. So I got one on the left, and you can see my tires are above the ground here. And it's giving me just enough clearance, for me to work underneath the car. And the same thing on the other side, another 3-ton jack right here. And basically the wheel is a few inches off the ground. Now over here, these are the panels, the plastic panels underneath the car. And there's 3 of them. So there's one in the front, which is under the radiator, which I did not have to take out, but I took out the second one and I took out the third one to get access to the starter. Now also, I can't emphasize enough to make sure, safety's in mind when you're working underneath this car. So in addition to jacking it up, I did, block off the wheels on both sides and also have the emergency brake on. So this is the battery in the front right here, the starting battery, and that's its only purpose is to start the car. And this is the battery in the back, which basically powers up all my electronics. So let me put my camera back down. So anyway, well, let me pause it to come back here. Okay, so I got the camera turned back the right way. So anyway, the car was jacked up, and the next thing I wanted to do was to make sure I was getting 12 volts down to my solenoid that was on my starter. So this is my old starter that I took out the car already. And if you look back here, there's a couple of terminals. There's a larger one and a smaller one. This is called the B for battery, and that's where the 12 volts directly connects from your battery to the solenoid. And then there's also a second lug here that's called the S terminal. And this is when you try to start your car, it'll send 12 volts DC down to this terminal and energize the solenoid. And when it energizes the solenoid, it's going to switch to 12 volts from this main terminal that's coming from the battery to the motor and to turn the motor. Now, once it gets the voltage on there, it's going to go ahead and there's a plunger inside this starter right here, and it's going to push that armature out right there, and the motor is going to spin, and it connects to your flywheel on your car, and that's what starts your engine. So anyway, I was able to take the S lead off. That's the wire going to the ignition to start your car. And I did put a voltmeter on there, and I did read 12.6 volts DC. So I knew that I had a bad starter at that point in time because I was getting the correct voltage down to the S terminal. Now, that's where the fun was starting. So what happened is I had to try to figure out how to get the starter out of there because it's pretty jam-packed underneath there. And if you notice, there's 2 bolts that holds the starter in place. The bottom bolt was fairly easy to get out. The top one was very, very difficult. So these bolts, they're basically, I think, 4 or 5 inches long. And you need a special socket to get this out, because at first I tried to use with the regular 13 millimeter socket with a ratchet set, and it felt pretty snug on there, but when I tried to turn it, it slipped. And just from previous experience, I know that wasn't a good idea to proceed. So anyway, I knew something wasn't quite right. And so after I did some investigation, basically went out on the internet and started Googling some stuff, I found out that you need a special socket to get this out. And it's called an E-Torx set, right? And so for my particular starter, I had to get what they call an E16. And you can see the shape of it. It looks similar to a regular socket set, like a 13 millimeter, but it's different. And so this is what you need to get this particular starter out. And while I was there, when I bought that at Harbor Freight, I had an idea I might need a longer ratchet set because mine was only roughly 7 inches. And so I bought one 12 inches just in case I needed it. So anyway, I was able to get the bottom bolt out, but again, like I said before, the top bolt was very, very difficult. So after several attempts in trying to get that top bolt out, I almost gave up on 3 different occasions trying to get access to that top bolt. But a few of the things I had to do was there's several different wires and clips that were in the way. So I had to undo those clips and basically try to move those wires as much as I can so I could get the ratchet set in there. And then second, there was this small aluminum shield that was in the way, and it was just 2 little screws. I was able to take that out. But still, I even had difficulty trying to get access to the top bolt. So I did go back to Harbor Freight, and I decided to buy even a longer arm right here. This one's 17 inches, and this one's pretty cool in the sense that it can swivel back and forth in case you got to get in there on an angle. So I had 3 different ratchet sets trying to get in there. But even with all of that, I was still unsuccessful in trying to get to that top bolt. And then what happened is I saw a few YouTube videos, a couple of them on 2007 SL550 where they was changing out a starter, and another one on the 2006. In one of these videos, the guy was showing to get the starter out, you actually had to take the 2 bolts out of the catalytic converter. So there's two of them underneath the car. There's one on the passenger side and there's one on the driver's side. Now, my particular starter is located under the passenger side. And in their videos, their starter was located under the driver's side. So there were some differences, but, I did learn a lot from their videos because there was a lot of things in common as well. And so when I was watching this one video, this guy was saying that, to give you some additional space to get your ratchets in there, you have to take those 2 bolts that's holding that catalytic converter and take it off of both sides, and it'll give you like an extra 4 or 5 inches to do that. And so that's what I did, and he was right. And so once I was able to take those bolts out on both sides, I was able to have enough room to get my ratchet set and get access to that top bolt. Okay, so after I was able to get the 2 bolts out that was holding the starter to the motor or the flywheel, the next thing I had to do was take both of the wires off. And so I took off what they call the B lead right here, and this is a 13 millimeter socket you need. And then I proceeded to take off the lead, a smaller lead right here, which is the S lead, which you get your 12 volts from your start, when you turn on the key. This is 10 millimeters. So I disconnected both of these terminals off of here, and then I was able to remove the starter from the motor, from the engine itself. Now, trying to get it out was a little difficult as well, because I only had a small space to try to wiggle the starter from underneath the car. It took a few attempts, and there's hardly any room to get it out. And basically, after trying a few times, going back and forth in different angles, I was finally able to get it out. Now, what happens is the same thing. When I got the new starter in, it's difficult to get it back in, but I managed to get it back in and then put everything back together. Okay, so that's pretty much where I left off yesterday evening. Like I said, it was getting dark, and so basically I put the new starter in, got the 2 bolts back in, and I hooked up the 2 leads, and that's where I stopped. So this morning, I said, let me check my old starter here. And I knew it was bad because I did bring it to Advanced Auto Parts, and they bench tested it, and they said it was bad. But I just wanted to play with it myself. So basically, I took some jumper cables from my car and, hooked the positive lead here. And then I put the negative lead to somewhere on like a ground on the outside the starter, and then this S lead I just took a regular jumper, just like a regular clip lead, and basically I went from the 12 volts that was coming from my battery and basically just touched it right here on the S lead, simulating like you're trying to start the car. And basically, it looked like it tried to turn a little bit, but really nothing at all. So I got a feeling, the problem with this starter, because I learned this from YouTube. They have what they call some brushes, and they're back here, and that's where the voltage comes in, and it's attached to a commutator. And the commutator creates this electric field and it switches back and forth, and that's what makes the motor rotate, turns the armature, and then it'll turn this little flywheel right here. But I think what happened is some people say you could hit it with a hammer, and I think what it is supposed to like shake off some of the carbon that might be on the brushes itself. So it might make some type of contact, but I believe that was the issue with my particular starter here. So anyway, where we're going to go next is I'm going to go ahead and get underneath the car. I think this might be interesting to show you what it looks like before I finish the installation process. And what I mean by that, I got to connect both of those catalytic converters back in place, but I want to give you an idea how much space I have, and maybe after I do that, get everything bolted back in and get all the wires and the clips back into place. Maybe I'll show you what it looks like after. So let me go ahead and pause the video, and then we'll get underneath the car. The only other thing I want to say, I wasn't sure if I said this particular nut that goes on here is 13 millimeters, and this one is 10 millimeters. Okay, before I get underneath the car, I want to show you what it looks like from the top side. Because there's some, let me get a flashlight here. I know it's difficult to see. That's my dipstick right there. I took it out to get it out of the way. But if you look down there, you'll see that black wire, not the holes, the first one, it's more underneath there, right next to the flywheel on the engine itself. It's sort of difficult to get this in there. But you see those 2 clips? And there's that black wire. I had to undo both of those clips right there and pull that black wire out, because if I didn't do that, there was no way I could get the ratchet set on the boat, because that black wire down there was directly in the path of me getting my ratchet set right there. So basically just had to take a screwdriver, open those clips, and sort of wiggle that black cable out of the way, and then I was able to get the ratchet set in there. So let's go underneath the car. Okay, I'm underneath the car right now, and I know it's difficult to see, but that's my new starter. And I got both of the wires connected in there. And I wanted to show you this. This is that catalytic converter, and it connects to the exhaust system. But those are those 2 bolts I'm talking about. One of them right here and one on the top side. And when I took those bolts out, and there's a catalytic converter on the right side and the left side of the car, you got to take them both out. You can see this is all the additional space. I could push this down like another 4 or 5 inches. And they gave me enough space to get my ratchet set in there. Also, I want to show you, give you a better angle. Let's see if I can get this. I had to take a little aluminum cup right here. I had to remove that out the way. It was just 2 small little things I had to take off. And if you see the green wire and that black wire, you can see I had to take those clips off and move it out the way. And then I know it's difficult to see, but basically you have the 2 bolts that holds the starter in place. So you can see it was just enough space I could get my ratchet in here by lowering the Cadillac converters. And then I was able, to get those bolts out. So let me pause the video here. Okay guys, I'm back. I just finished up putting everything back together. I basically had to put those bolts back in the Cadillac converters on both sides, and basically put all the wires and put them back in the clips and reattach everything. So anyway, I double checked, make sure all my leads were tight, all my bolts were tight, and just want to make sure everything was okay, everything was back the way it was. So what I'm going to do now is, since I got everything back, I'll go ahead and get underneath the car again, and I'll show you a couple of things I had to do, which you might have not been able to see in the first video. So let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, I'm back underneath the car, and you can see, I got the starter back in place. You got the wires right there, the S wire, and the bigger wire, the battery wire, all connected. Also, I connected my Cadillac converter back up, the 2 bolts. This is for the right side and the left side. And then I'll show you one more thing from a different angle. This is basically where I came in. I'm using a screwdriver right here, but basically where I came in with my ratchet. And I was able to drop this Cadillac converter down about 4 inches. And I had to take these clips out the way and move that wire. And there's another clip further up. And you had to move that black wire out of the way. And right here, you can see that's the bottom bolt to the starter. So it was pretty easy access. The one that was difficult to get to is right up here. But what happens is once you move these wires out the way, and this thing is clipped on too, so you can move it. And once you move that out of the way and you lower this Cadillac converter, you can see that top bolt and get access to it. So anyway, that was pretty much it. Oh, and one other thing, I did remove this little cover right here. It was just these 2 little screws, but then that gave me a little more room, like a couple of more inches to work with between dropping my Cadillac converter and this wall right here. And so that was just enough. So let me pause it. Okay, so I'm back. So everything is all done. It's all completed. I did connect both of my batteries, the one in the front and one in the back. I double checked everything. And I guess now it's the moment of truth. So let's go ahead and get in the car and see what happens. We'll give it a try here. Hopefully I can have a nice drive this weekend. Sweet sound of success. I'm so relieved. That's great news. It's a few days trying to get that starter out and get the new one in, but I guess my perseverance paid off. So the only thing I have left to do is, let me flip it. The only thing I have left to do is put these panels back underneath and basically use these screws. There's roughly 9 of them, but they 8 millimeter screws. So I think I'll get that done probably in about the next 10 minutes, and I think life is good. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I like to give back because, you know, there was some people that posted some other stuff, and it's a good way to give back. So I hope you find this video useful, and if you got any questions, just post it and I'll try to help. Thanks everyone. Have a good day.